Today we read the book of Job, chapter 2. I wonder if you knew this story of Job before reading this passage. Everyone knows, I suppose, about Job's suffering, but this scenario might have raised an eyebrow if you weren't familiar with it before. There's no sign here of Satan being an enemy of God, of Satan residing in hell while God lives in heaven, of a battle being waged between them. That picture comes from a different period, a different concept of the supernatural world. Here, Satan is one of the heavenly beings surrounding the throne of God, a servant, and his activities on earth are subject to God's authority. Job's experiences only take place because God authorises them. Now, the whole book of Job is couched not as an historical account, but an exploration of the meaning of human suffering, some of it in narrative form and some in poetry. So the interesting thing really here is how the book presents various approaches to the problem, the meaning of suffering, and how those explanations fare. The short answer is not very well. At this point, the narrative assumes the view that as God is all-powerful, nothing can happen on earth without God willing it, whether good or bad. That's logical, at least. And that bad things happen as a test to see if our love of God can withstand misfortune. Well, Job passed that test. But later it becomes clear that he did not buy that explanation of his suffering. The friends at the end of the passage who come to visit him, his comforters they're known as, represent another explanation of suffering, and it's a prevailing view then and now. They claim Job must have sinned and he's being punished by God for his sin. Job rejects this explanation completely. He roundly protests his innocence, his clear conscience before God. But even now, people often say, "What have I done to deserve this?" Do you remember the satire, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? If you do, you'll certainly remember the answer to that key question, the meaning of life. The meaning of life? 42. Unfortunately, this doesn't help us very much, and the computer Deep Thought points out that, of course, we never really understood the question in the first place. So don't hold your breath expecting from Job a definitive answer to the problem of human suffering. I'm afraid it doesn't really satisfy us on that point. If you read to the end, or if you skip to near the end, you'll find a dialogue between God and Job. And Job's conclusion seems to be, in the end, that he is asking a question to which he simply could not understand the answer. It's a mystery which only God can grasp. Not very satisfactory to us, perhaps, particularly in these times when we might well be asking, why is this happening to us? But at least Job reminds us that there are no simple answers, that there are no pat answers to why people suffer, especially those who seem to us to be innocent of any serious wrong. Sometimes it is better to say, "I don't understand," than to pretend we do. But because we humans always try to make meaning out of our experiences, we struggle with this. We can at least say suffering is universal in one form or another. And from the perspective of the Christian faith, it's really important to remember that we believe not in a remote God imposing suffering as a trial, but in an incarnate God who embraced all of the depths of human suffering in Jesus of Nazareth, who was tempted by Satan in the wilderness, tested as we are, yet without sin.